This is the Okayest Hunter podcast. Never pass on shooter bucks, because that's just meat in the freezer. It's your tag, you hunt how you want. This is Okayest Hunter.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Okayest Hunter podcast. Come at you from the Okayest Hunter podcast studio, brought to you by and presented by, or whatever the words are there, Spartan Forge. Head over to spartanforge.ai to learn more, download their app, and be sure to use code OHP for 10%. That's the wrong amount.
20.
I'm gonna expect the worst, hope for the best kind of thing. And you're gonna get 25% off plus 5. We're gonna do some math today, which is not my strong suit.
Makes it sound better.
I can't. I'm like Ron Burgundy. If I just can't read the teleprompter, my eyes went to the wrong thing and I saw 10. 25% off. And just so you guys all know, if you haven't heard, they're dropping a major release this week. It's being submitted to the Apple, Play Store and the Google Play Store, whatever the hell they're called. It takes a little while for those things to get approved once they do those changes. But the map clarity is going to be, if you thought it was clear before,
which it was,
it's impeccable. And then the historical data, or
the weather data, or
the historical map data, like you can look back up to 8 years in some regions of maps. So you can look at a parcel or a property that maybe you hunt, and you can look at it 8 years ago, 7 years ago, 6 years ago, 5 years ago, 2 years. So you can see how it's changed over time.
Heck yeah, that's
all
awesome
the way up
for
to the
log
current
too.
year. Yep, correct. That's kind of the idea there.
Right?
And the clarity, Bill, the founder, Bill Thompson, shared with me some screenshots of like where they started as an app and where they're at today with that clarity.
Yeah,
it's, unless you see it, you're not going to understand. And there's a technical term that he sent me. I'm not even going to get into what that means, because it's like something per centimeters. It's how many pixels of the map fit in per square centimeter of your smartphone screen. And so he was getting really nerdy with me on it. And I was like, Bill, I don't know what that means. You have to explain that to me. Remember who you're talking to. This is the Okayest Hunter. So for whatever that's worth, if you're not like onto them yet, or figured out that that's the place to be putting your efforts and dropping pins as a whitetail hunter, you should make the switch if you haven't, or if you haven't even had one of those apps at all. Like, that's the one to start with for sure.
Spartan, yeah.
So anyway, and I know, Derek, you've made great use of it for shed hunting and scouting, and you've dropped lots of pins.
Well, it's interesting because it's still on like a lot of forums and hunting stuff. Like everybody's kind of like, which one do I get? Hunt Stand, Onyx. So like Spartan Forge thing is kind of catching on, but I always am like, you guys need to look at this, because it like takes everything that those two do well, because each do something a little bit different. It does them all well. Like, you guys should be here.
And it's got the deer predictability, which the other ones don't have. I shouldn't say that, because I know HuntWise has like the deer cast.
I think that's based on like lunar stuff, though. You know what I mean? Kind of.
It's not off of empirical data aggregated over 8 years.
The AI.
Yeah.
They have nowhere near the data warehouse.
The neural.
Bill has.
What do you call it? Neural mapping or something? I'm getting it wrong right now.
Sounds cool.
It's very, very impressive. So please go check it out. Yeah, I'll talk about that for a while if we wanted to. Bill, we'll get him on in the summer when he comes through Wisconsin. I'm drinking some Drop Time Spirits. Derek's got a beer, so cheers to Drop Time for keeping us from going dry in the studio. It was good stuff. I know we shared it with a bunch of people at the trade show that listen to the podcast. Like, oh, is that Drop Time? I'm like, it is. Do you want a shot?
Everybody
we have shot glasses.
And
I think we got in trouble, actually. We got a note on our stand like the next day, like, you can't give out beer and booze. And I'm like, sorry about that.
Hey, those guys brought over the shot glasses. You're not going to not use them.
Right. They had to be put to some sort of use. I'll put this up on the screen for you so you can see it there, Derek. And we do have a guest with us today, so let's get into our guests and our topic. And for everyone that's starting to join us here, welcome to the show. All right, so with us live, Kristen Schauf, founder and CEO of Uncharted Supply Company. Don't die is your hashtag that I see on all of your stuff. Like, thanks for being on the show. It's good to meet you. I would like you to provide some context for the audience as to who you are and what you got going on over there with the Uncharted Supply Company.
Right on. Well, I'm a Wisconsin guy. First of all, given this podcast, it's probably worth noting I'm from Barron, Wisconsin. Grew up on a dairy farm up there. Several thousand acres of crops and forests and the whole thing. So I now live in Park City, Utah. I've lived a few different places. My background is pretty wide. I was a musician for 10 years, played all over the world. Ended up doing a lot of work overseas with the military during Operation Iraqi Freedom, like providing bands and entertainment and some really kind of the forward operating bases and joint security stations. So kind of the more dangerous spots during that war. Started a cider company, Joe Heron, called Crispin Cider back in the day. That is owned by Miller Coors now. And now I run Uncharted Supply, which, we're out here in Park City, Utah. I've always been drawn to the mountains. And when we started building this company, I was like, man, before we get too many employees and I'm stuck here for the next decade, I better get to where I want to be. I guess, moved out here and started hiring people, and that's what we do. So we build, we started with like 72-hour kits, and now we build everything from battery jump starters to pack rafts to small first aid kits to hip packs. And, I'm a big hunter, so almost everything we build, it's not hunting specific, but it definitely works for those situations as well. I'll stop there for now.
That's a lot of stuff. I'm getting some audio feedback. I don't know. I thought I fixed it, but it's coming back through, which is fine. We can roll with the punches here pretty good. Do you happen to have like earbuds or something like that? I wonder if that would help.
Yeah, 1 second.
Thank you, Christian.
It's a nice looking moose in the background that we'll see there. Is it on our end? I'm hearing it no matter what I do here.
Sounds like it's happening right now.
I'm going to have some post-production editing to do for the first time in a while. Usually I just send it. Let's see if that helps. And then you should be able to just change your audio settings right within here.
We're looking in settings, audio.
Sounds better.
Oh, yeah, the feedback stuff went away, but now I just can't hear you. I wonder. It ain't a podcast unless we got an audio problem. That's usually how it goes.
Is it? Those must have microphone.
I'm assuming there's a microphone built into that. I still can't hear you coming through yet. I think you can hear us, but we can't hear you, which I don't know if there's like a mic setting also. All right, he's going to come right back again. If you're tuning in live, hang in there with us for just a second. We fix an audio glitch here. It happens from time to time. At least like once a month or two, we have something that happens.
It's always something new,
There's only so much
playing
you can
with
control.
all the technology. It is what it is.
Yeah, there's a lot of electricity in this room.
You got a lot of plugs, a lot of cords. I give you credit for getting it set up every week.
Still not seeing it come through yet. You're not muted here on my end. What else I can do here in this end that I can see? Sorry about that, Christian. We'll
How about that? You got me now? Hello?
It's coming from there.
It's coming from the TV. That's kind of interesting, which means it's not coming through my feed here. How's that even possible?
You can hear
me? Yes.
Kind of, but it's not doing what it should be doing.
Not through any of our devices.
The devices that will record for the podcast. How is that? That feels really strange. Oh, it's because YouTube isn't muted, so I don't know. That doesn't make any sense to me. And that's muted, so it shouldn't even be working there at all.
Well, that has nothing to do with the feedback either, because that wasn't up the whole time, right?
Right. Well, darn. If you want to switch back, let's see if maybe the issue persists. I don't know if you were hearing it or not, but it was like really glitchy sounding on our end. Maybe Greg's in the chat, so maybe he'll tell us if he's hearing any audio feedback issues.
Okay. How about that? No, okay.
Let me check the audio on mine, make sure it's supposed to be working the right way.
Is there a dial-in?
Hello, Gregory.
Roadcaster. Everything says it's Roadcaster, which is what we're using. Trim all. I don't know. It's definitely this is a new problem, Christian. I'm sorry that you are being exposed to us.
That's what I do.
Not normal. a tricky one.
Uncharted territory. Come on. You got to throw in some terrible humor.
Option stereo audio input should be all set.
You can't hear me?
We cannot. Let me I'll power down my mixer. I'll turn it back on, see if it comes back through again. Just stay right here. Don't go anywhere. We'll just hang tight for just a second. Watch your ears, Derek. That fixed it.
Yeah, how is it picking him up, but not through?
All right. Trying to say something?
Hello?
Nope.
Nothing.
Yeah.
Everything's working on his end.
I'll log back in.
Yeah. Let me just try one more thing on my computer settings and see if I can.
And Christian, you're hearing us fine, right?
Yes. Yeah.
There it is.
Oh, there he is.
I found the problem.
Was it on your computer?
I think so. It was sending the audio to my TV, which
Sorry about that, man.
I think the computer's trying to be smarter than we are. So we'll pick up right off. We'll edit that out in post. But essentially, I got to get my bearings here. We didn't die. Don't die. Now that I'm having heart palpitations. How did you why was this product created? How did you get into this? We talked about you had the cider company and you did the tour in Iraq for Penny playing for the troops, which is really something, man. That's pretty cool. Not many people can say they've done that. But then you jump into this. It's just, where's the connection point here?
If I put everything together, it would probably make a lot of sense. Everything I've done in my life has dovetailed into this. But generally speaking, growing up on a farm in Wisconsin, spending 8 years in Iraq with military, I then moved to California, and I moved out for a job. And I'd never been around people that, what I want to say is we're so incapable. But the reality is, it's just a different existence. People depend on technology. They live in settings. And, I stuck in a 2-inch snowfall one day that basically, stopped me in my tracks for 8 hours. And where I went to school, 2 inches of snow meant it didn't snow. And, I just sat there for 8 hours wondering, well, what happens if there's an earthquake? Because this is nothing. And that's kind of what took me down the path. I'd always want to be in the outdoor industry. I love doing that kind of stuff. And but I didn't compete with everyone. I didn't want another pro show. And suddenly I was like, wow, there's a vein here that really ties into everything I've done in my life. And decided to go for it. So that was kind of it.
That's 2 inches where you were at is nothing here in Wisconsin, as we're all well aware. That would be sorry, no big deal. I mean, I think we've had 12 inches at some point, and they're like, get your butt to work or
go to
school
work,
or whatever.
Time to go.
They never cancel stuff here. So that first 72 hours, as I understand it, is the critical time of, some sort of, if the emergency first responders can't get to you, that's where you could run into some serious issues. And it sounds like what you designed, it really helps with that initial of hours out of the gate.
Right. So I've been trying to find an updated stat on this because I tend to believe this number got more. But when I started, there was a very statistic that 95% of all emergency situations were resolved in 72 hours. What that meant was whether you went to ditch or September 11th, the cavalry would be 72 hours. But what you did in those first 72 hours, is very critical. If it's freezing, if it's super hot, if you don't have food, if you're injured, and you're on your own, you got to at least get through. And so that was, again, a lot of people struggling to pay the bills, and they're living in small apartments or condos. And how do you do something that prepares to build a bunker?
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah.
Let's see sound again. What is the deal tonight?
I'm sorry, guys. Shoot.
No, we can hear you. It's a little choppy, but I mean, it is what it is.
And we're getting mixed. Sounds good now. No sound. So I don't know what is changing because it's just it's all just web app stuff here. Yeah, we can't get in a good groove with the audio for some reason.
I'm bad luck tonight.
You're usually good luck. Wow, I'd hate to maybe try without the headphones again. I'm not sure what the. It's got to be. Last time it was us. Oh, never mind. He said never mind. So Oak Tree Dreams. I don't know what you're doing us over there.
Drew, are we doing okay?
Drew. It is a little choppy. You're like coming in and out. So I don't know
Oh, really?
why it's doing that or what the. Are you on phone or a computer?
No, I'm on the computer. Do you want me to switch your phone?
Let's try. Let's go with that. Let's give it a try. At this point, let's see what happens. Do you want me? I can resend you that link if you.
I got it right here.
Okay, I'll invite you in as soon as you show up over there.
All right.
Weird issues.
Usually it just pops on, no problem.
Yeah, but there's always something that seems to happen.
Yeah.
See if he's gonna pop back in here from his phone in just a minute. So hang in there, guys and gals.
I know your brain is going a million miles an hour trying to figure out how to make it work.
Yeah, I'm not sure why it's being tricky like that, but just back to full screen. We should be okay. Fingers crossed.
Got me?
I got you. No issue. Oh, I'm hearing some
right.
feedback. It's okay. No, okay. We're good. So 72 hours, critical time for like first responders to show up. Things can get weird quick and dicey. But I think what I want to do is go through some of the products that you have real quick, because the one I'm looking at here on our podcast table, it's a smaller pack, and I've seen some very large ones. And I know you have like this one that you mentioned, like there's life rafts and tents and all that stuff. Can you just walk us through the different products that you have in the various applications? Because we do have a good size audience that does some Western hunts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I would start by saying this. If we're talking hunting specific, I'll go that direction. Our survival kits are really designed to be in your car, in your house. You know, when something happens and you're not getting home or you got to move, you've got everything you need there. You don't have to run around the house, grabbing supplies and you forget something, right? You just know that there's complete thought there, and it's peace of mind. Now, if you're hunting, I didn't build our 16-pound survival kit for, Western hunting per se, or for whitetail hunting. Anybody that's, hike mountains, you're cutting the tags off your jacket to save weight. So, what I always tell people is there's a famous quote, and it's the best camera is the one in your hand. And I think it's the same with first aid kits. There's a lot of times people don't bring a first aid kit because they're mountain biking or trail running or hunting or hiking, and nothing happened the other 99 times they went out. And man, I just don't want to carry all that weight. I'm going to go fast. I'll be back, no problem. And that's when things happen. A classic example, I ski tour almost every morning out here, where we hike up the mountain with our skis and ski down, and my dog comes with me every morning, and we've done this for years. And last winter, he ran into a buddy of mine, gashed his leg open, and we were on an 11,000 foot peak, about 7 miles from home, and he was bleeding out. And I had our little triage kit with and saved his life. So it's just those types of experiences really just remind me that you always should have something with you. So I don't need to go through our whole catalog of products. I encourage everyone to go look on our site. But for hunters, starting with the truck, we've got these battery jump starters that are just awesome. I don't know how many times I've gone out for a long weekend and came back and I left the dome light on, and there's still no service at the truck. And now what do? Right? How do I find somebody to come jump my car? Well, these little battery jump starters will jump an 8-liter diesel in a split second. So it's nice to have those. It's just peace of mind. The one you've got there, that First Aid Plus, we call it Plus because it's a little bit of a first aid kit plus, tools. You've got a multi-tool, a flashlight, glow sticks, duct tape, zip ties, wet wipes. A lot of stuff that you just use when you're in a pinch. And that's a great kit if you're with a bunch of guys at kind of a camp, and maybe there's 4 or 5 tents, and you've got a grill, you brought some other stuff in on horses, or maybe you drove in on the ATVs and you're set up. Like, that's a great kit to have sitting around the camp. Now, if you're going to leave camp and go out, that's pretty heavy, right? You're probably not going to carry that with you. And that's why we have the smaller ones. So we've kind of tried to, as we've gotten older and grown as a company, tried to build products that can just accompany you no matter what it is. I mean, it started out as 72-hour large scale emergencies, but man, everybody's got a different opinion of an emergency. Emergency could be a broken ankle 6 miles from home in the woods, right? Or it could be a gash that you just need to bandage up and stop the bleeding before you get home. And so we think about that, and that's how we do things. We just came out with a new product. I just used it all weekend. I was actually axis deer hunting in Texas, and we call it the Park Pack. And it really started, people kept going, hey, I'm going to Yellowstone or Teton, and should I carry my 72 with me with the kids? And like, no, that's ridiculous. But it made me think, how do people carry, what makes sense? And it's a fanny pack, it's a hip pack. We designed this thing so it does not flop. It's waterproof. It almost feels like one of those weightlifting belts, they're supportive when you have it on. It's got MOLLE attached water bottle holders on the side you can swap out for bear spray. You can swap out for a pistol holster. You can swap out for fly fishing gear. And, for me, like hunting down Texas, it was kind of rainy, windy. I had a lightweight waterproof shell. I had a little triage first aid kit. I had a water bottle. And what else did I have? Just a knife, a couple granola bars. It's all sitting around my hips, and I don't have a sweaty back because I was carrying a backpack everywhere, and it feels like I'm not wearing anything. And for me, that's kind of the magic, right? When you can create a product that doesn't encumber your experience, and you can move faster and be more effective at hunting or stalking or whatever it is. That's what I get excited about. So we work on that a lot.
That's definitely the key, because I know, like, a lot of the things that I'm doing, I should be having something to be prepared. And in the back of my mind, I've had a little bit of training here and there and been in some situations where you make things work, and, you get a bleed, you got to, make a little makeshift tourniquet. And as much as you can make things work, man, when you see something put together that's like, here's everything you need to do it right, it's like,
Gives you
holy cow, I should
confidence.
really be taking something, and the pack you were just talking about, the Plus that we've got here, this would be awesome for in a vehicle, or like Eric and I have been to the Boundary Waters, northern Minnesota canoe trip. I would definitely bring
The
something
waterproof
this side
nature
along,
of that is critical.
but for going on a hunt, like you're saying, having that smaller pack that's just like your triage kit, what you need in it, man,
Yep.
that's ideal for doing, what we're doing and what most of the country is doing for hunting. You don't want to be lugging around something big. Then I think that's why people don't typically do that.
No, that triage kit, it fits in like a cargo pocket on your pants. It fits in a chest pocket on your jacket, or, like a bike jersey in the back. It's tiny. It's smaller than your iPhone. And it's just, there's no excuse not to take it. And I can't tell you how many times, usually what I'm in there for is blister packs or blister shells. You're hiking somewhere, you get a blister, and everybody here listening knows how, man, a heel blister on a boot can just slow you down and make your day miserable. And you also know how effective it is to cover that up and just keep going. It's almost like it's not there. So even if it's not life or death, it's just enjoying the moment and overcoming whatever little thing happened. And it's just so easy. It's one of those things that, like, most people don't do it until they've had an experience where they were really screwed. But man, my mission in life is to try to get people thinking about it before it happens.
Heck yeah. And just like you said, it's not even about like life or death, but it's about like being able to continue enjoying that moment that you work to be in.
Right.
Like you said, like the hiking, the blister kit, but I've done some, shed hunting, hiking in some areas, and like you're not looking, or you get a dead stick into the calf, into the shin, take a big gouge out. Like that's not a big deal in most places, but if you're in the right place, that is a big deal, and you got to take care of it. So being able to enjoy your time wherever you're at, having something like that's definitely going to help.
Yeah.
When I was in the Boundary Water canoe area, it almost got bad quick. Our designated navigator misinterpreted one of the spots where we're supposed to, what are they called again, where you're getting out with the canoe and dragging it through the portage. Jeez. And so we thought we were like one portage further than we actually were, which goofed up our whole internal compass pretty bad. And then it got dark. We got separated. We had 4 guys, 2 canoes, 2 guys in each canoe. And suddenly it was like very sketchy. We climbed up on a spot because we saw some other campers that we thought maybe they could like help us because we were totally in the wrong spot. And it got pretty dicey. Like someone almost broke their freaking leg in the pitch black dark, separated from one another, no GPS, no way to call for help or communicate. And, we were pretty young when I did that trip. So we didn't have, I think, a good first aid
what
kit.
you should have had, right?
So it could have been pretty precarious, which is, seeing something like this makes you realize like how much more confident you could be in being prepared, and even give like your loved ones back home some confidence. Maybe a sat phone would have been a good idea, and some guys go with those things, but you don't want to be dialing that if you don't have to, or maybe it's not fatal. So being able to take care of yourself is a good thing. And the blister stuff too, man, that's just, you just don't want to be, like Derek said, you don't want to be miserable doing the thing that you just prepped for
That you
like
worked so
probably
hard,
a
right?
half a year or more, that you got
Right.
points built up for, you bought a tag for, you did all this stuff. And the various use cases make sense where you're very, I mean, as a marketer, we talk about, not to get off deer hunting too far here, but we talk about psychographics just as much as demographics. Psychographics are like, I'm in Wisconsin, we say bubbler. They don't say bubbler in Texas. So my marketing and ad campaigns better tailor themselves to that psychograph of a person based on where they're geolocated or what nomenclature they're using and things of that nature. It seems as though you went that granular with this product that it fits the precise use case that someone's looking for, and it factors into things that they care about. Like you said, you're ripping off tags of your shirt if you're an elk hunter to shed pounds. You're not going to carry something heavy, but if you have something that's designed for those folks, then that's fantastic. I mean,
Yeah.
that's got to be really hard from a supply chain standpoint, from a product development standpoint, from like, I don't know how you're putting this together, but I'm looking at this first aid kit, and just by the way it's represented, I can tell that there's a level of quality here that I don't think I would see, especially in this category of product.
It's impressive.
Yeah, well, I don't want to do something that somebody's already done, right? Like if we can't differentiate, we shouldn't build it. It probably means there's a good answer. I was on Shark Tank early on, and I remember, one of the things he always used to say, I think it was Mark Cuban. He always say, not to us, thankfully, but different entrepreneurs that come in with an idea, and he's like, you're solving for a problem that doesn't exist. You have to find where the problems are. You have to find where you can build a better mousetrap or a new idea on something, and that's what we always try to do. And the beauty of that is a lot of that comes from experience. I mean, how many times have you been out there and like you had to rig something, and then you come home and you just think about it. You're like, man, if I would have had this, or I could have done it like this, then it's better, right? I mean, necessity is the mother of invention. So, yeah, I mean, we really come from a place of authenticity. We really test our products. We think everything through at a really high level. And yeah, supply chain, especially now with everything going on in the world for a small company, it's hard. It's like going to battle, with the grim reaper of business or entrepreneurship every day. Like, you try to stay alive, and you're trying to sell, and you're trying to communicate this, and you're trying to build a quality product and ask people to spend hard-earned money when there are cheaper options out there, and they're just not nearly as good. But in a space like this, sometimes it's hard to really be honest with yourself about what you need and what you might need. So.
And what is the feedback been from your customers? Like, have you gotten, I'm assuming that you have a mountain, those, is it the Allstate commercials, or no, it's the State Farm ones where they're like, yeah, we've seen a thing, or we know a thing or two because we've seen a thing or two. I imagine you guys have people writing into you with like, this product saved this or helped that, or, if I didn't have this, oh my gosh. Do you have any testimonials like that strike you as, you wouldn't believe this one, man?
Yeah, we've got a couple save my life stories, but only a couple. And what we get most of is, I mean, if you think about the trajectory of an emergency, you're not life or death immediately. Usually something happens which makes something else happen. It's this downward spiral that leads to a really bad situation. And I think the beauty of what we've created is it cuts that cycle off way early. So you don't get to a life and death situation where you finally pull this kit out. You got a heel blister, you fix it, and now you don't think about it the rest of the day. Instead of moving at X miles an hour, you're at 5x, or a fifth of that, right? And now the sun goes down, and now you're lost. Like, it's funny how one bad thing can make more bad things kind of happen and lead you down a bad path. So what we have a ton of is small things that you can see how they become big things, but they stop early, and it turns potential large scale things into just minor inconveniences, and people go about their day. And to me, while it's not as dramatic, that's really success.
Absolutely.
I'll add one thing there. The one thing that we do get a ton of reviews on is our Zeus and our Athena jump starters, and that's just because it's so tangible and it's so binary. It's like my truck didn't start. I didn't have cell service. There's nobody to jump me, and in 30 seconds, I started my truck and I drove home. Like we have, if you go to our website, there's hundreds of people saying that. There's this one, I'll never forget. This guy had really poor English, or he couldn't type, but the moral of the story was his wife bought it for him as a Christmas present. He thought it was a cute toy, and to appease her, put it in his truck. And then he got to the job site, and his bulldozer was dead. And he was like, I'm just going to use this so I can tell my wife it was dumb, and it started the bulldozer. And he's like, I just bought 2 more,
That's awesome.
So that kind of stuff just makes me smile, and it makes the hard work worth it.
You hit it right on the head when you were talking about when you first said that about your jump starter, and you mentioned the dome light, because the last late season bow hunt I went on here in Wisconsin was frigidly cold, and I left a door uncracked. It wasn't closed all the way or whatever, but it was daylight obviously when I went in for an afternoon hunt. Didn't notice it. Coming back, I'm like walking toward the vehicle, I'm like 100 yards away. I'm like, somebody maybe like a game warden or somebody pulled up, because there's like a car that's on right by my car. And when I got closer, I was like, sure shit, it was my car light that was on. The dome light did not start because it was like 5 degrees. Call the wife. She's got to load up the 2 kids in the van, drive 30 minutes to come jumpstart me. Oh my God, where were you, Christian? I should have been prepared.
Yeah, it's like, again, that ended up being a big pain in the ass. And with one of our little jump starters, like literally away you go in 30 seconds.
It's like the author James Clear wrote Atomic Habits, and I think he talks about, like, if a plane's heading from New York to California, if you turn the nose of that plane just like a fraction of a degree, you're going to end up like in Mexico or something, nowhere near the mark. So that small adjustment has a big trajectory on the success or failure of whatever it is you're doing. So, and it almost reminds me of the movie Minority Report too, where, if they roll the ball off the table, it's like, well, if I caught that, was it still going to fall? And it's all this like, pre-crime, like it didn't happen yet. So was it really going to happen? Was a really terrible thing going to happen if they didn't heal that blister? Well, who freaking knows? But isn't it great that like we don't have to wonder that then? Exactly.
100%. That's exactly it. Yeah.
And
that's it. I mean, I'm not a prepper. I'm not like a, it's funny. Like there's all these guys out there that are into like, bushcraft and like starting a fire with like a bowstring kind of. And I'm like, my philosophy is, if you're starting a fire with that, you've made 50 mistakes already. Like, why don't you have a 99-cent Bic lighter in your pocket? Like, this is insane. Yeah,
or you're on like some TV show like Naked and Afraid. Like,
the dramatics.
When we started, we had an investor that was heavily in the TV space, and so I was getting a lot of calls about like being an expert on this survival show or that survival show. I'll never forget this one call. This lady was like, so I just got off the phone with this lady who's a botanist, and she can tell you which plants to eat and which not, and that's kind of her superpower. She's like, what's kind of your superpower? And I was like, I bring 2 Snickers. I mean, like, why are we deciding which plants we should eat or not eat? Like, just can't you think ahead enough to, I mean, I understand that there are situations that might happen, but nobody's drinking their pee in the Amazon like Bear Grylls. Like, nobody,
Agreed.
Like,
he makes it look so appetizing.
But it's just logic. And, maybe that's my superpower, is just that, I think about hunting, like I've done grizzly hunts and, the Brooks Range and moose hunt. There's a moose behind me I shot up in British Columbia. And, man, as everyone knows, the woods, nature, animals, they will throw you 1,000 curveballs. You don't need to create any more for yourself. So, like, think it through while you're home, while you're sitting on your couch. Like, make a list. Make sure you've got redundancies. Make sure you know everything you can and control everything you can. And a big part of that for me is taking care of yourself and being safe. And you shouldn't be lost in the woods these days. I mean, I've got a watch that if I just started at my truck, it will point an arrow towards my truck, for 6 days of battery life, right? Like, gosh,
yep.
like there's no reason for that as long as you're thinking ahead. And I mean, that's kind of how I think of everything. It's just, I'm here to try to help people think.
No, but it's your superpower being logic and those things. Like I'll get so far as to like put, the thing I need most for the day, a lunch, right at the stoop by the door. So I'm on the way out the door. I'm going to grab this thing. I've prepared my lunch the night before. I put it by the door. I know what I'm doing. I got it all figured out. What do I forget? The thing I tried to remember the most. What happens when I get to, the deer stand? I forgot my headlamp. I left it plugged in the charger in the truck, or a lot of us do some dim-witted things in the moment. And when you're doing something that you've only done a handful of times, or only do once, one duration of time during the year or so forth, you're relearning this stuff. Like when I packed to go on vacation, well, last time I was on vacation was pre-COVID. And you're like, do I have this? Do I have that? Do I have this? There's not enough routine baked around some of the bigger trip things that someone might do, like an elk hunt or even just whitetail hunting. Like every year I got to remember, oh yeah, I haven't hung my saddle in a tree since last fall. I haven't set the stuff. I was showing my dad my saddle platform, and I was like trying to show him how it attaches to it. So I was like I don't even remember how I had this configured, but I know that once I was in the midst of the season, I was on a system, man. Like I had that stuff down pat, and suddenly now I have no clue. I was like embarrassed showing my dad, like, I know, I swear it clips together really nice. I promise, like I can show, and I couldn't. So, having this stuff to be prepared without even to think about it. Someone could go put this stuff together and put it in a waterproof bag, probably. And there's a lot of DIY guys and preppers that will, and they don't need that. Yeah, okay, well, you probably don't, buddy, because that's all you ever do is like overthink things into oblivion of the worst case scenario. That's not me. I just assume like the best is going to happen. I'm an entrepreneur. We think everything's going to work, right? Like that's the curse. Yeah. So having something like this and just pointing to that, I also have to remember like, oh, I have one for this and I have one for that and I have one for this and I have one for that. I think it's, I'm not, or like beating a dead horse. You're talking about the product, but I've not encountered this before. Like I haven't seen this product before. And Derek keeps pulling up and looking at the back and I keep doing the same. And this is just one of them. There's a whole bunch of them that exist. And, like I said, I've had some precarious situations, but they didn't pan out in the worst way. But deer hunters fall out of trees a lot. That's probably the number one injury. It's not that someone's getting shot.
Well, I think that and cuts.
Yep. So then,
I think you're constantly cutting your hand on shit. Yep. I am, at least in the woods.
Oh, for sure. Gutting a deer, bleeding all over the place.
Broadheads. I can't tell you how many times I've tried to trim a little dead branch or something. And the smaller the branch, the more those teeth of your saw catch. And all of a sudden it jumps, hits your hand, hits your knuckle, and you're bleeding everywhere. But I think sometimes just the thought of like buying one of these or having one of these, like that subconscious, like kind of keeps you in the field, whether you're thinking about it or not, like almost keeps you safer. Like, cause you're like mentally aware, like, you have the stuff, but like, you're still somehow you're just thinking about it. I remember this is many years ago back in high school. I was rabbit hunting with a good buddy of mine. We've gone rabbit hunting many, many times, shot a couple rabbits, and we're like dressing them out in the field, got them, we're cutting them up, and we're talking. And my buddy Ben, who has got more rabbits than anyone I can think of, is talking to me. And he's about to, what he would do is he had a nice big, almost like butcher style knife. And to get rid of the back legs there, he'd put that knife kind of right on that back joint by their, kind of like by the knee, and he'd give it a whack. And it would pop right through the bone of the rabbit. Well, he wasn't paying attention, somehow had his knife upside down, whacked the blade with his hand. And I mean, I don't know how many napkins it would take to stop the bleeding, but I know we put about 60 Taco Bell napkins from the truck into that thing and it was still bleeding through. So like having something would have really, really been helpful.
Well, I've just pulled up this DNR, Wisconsin DNR has like their incident reports. I'll share the screen with those that are watching. And I think you should be able to see this. Did I kick you out there somehow? Sorry about that, Christian. You're back.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. I'm back.
I'm not sure. I'm sharing my screen to show Wisconsin DNR incident reports, and these are real reports that happened. So it can only show me the years past. So I don't know what's going on this year so far. But just for example, we look back at May 9th of 2021. So that's almost a year ago. Shooter was using a bipod for shooting at a turkey. After firing the shotgun, it fell off the rest, causing the shooter to pull the trigger and round stuck the shooter victim in the right foot. How are we dealing with that with what you have? Like, what can we do with that injury? I'm assuming he's going to call someone and like the paramedics are going to show up. But until that happens, that's got to suck for that person, right?
Yeah. I mean, are you asking me how to fix if you shot yourself in the foot with a shotgun?
Well, like, what do you... there's going to be a lot of blood. There's going to be some bandages. Like if I had something with me in the pack you're talking about, like the day pack or the hiking pack, I just thought it'd be interesting to look at like some real world examples for hunters. Like what are hunters running into? And apparently it's shooting themselves in the foot. I just talked about falling out of trees and I was a little wrong apparently, because all of the ones I see from 2021 are like
shooting themselves.
Pellet strike to the hand, pellet strike to the stomach, pellet strike to the head. What? It tells you if they're fatal or not. Mostly all these are not fatal, but it tells you what happened.
I mean, a lot of times that's just a really painful injury and you just have to get back and get those removed, right? I mean, a gunshot wound or a shotgun wound are a little bit different in that capacity. I mean, I'm not saying you put a tourniquet on if you're not gushing blood out. Tourniquets, we sell tourniquets, and you got to know how to put them on right. And also, there are other things that happen when you put a tourniquet on. I mean, you're really cramping down on some soft tissue, and there can be other injuries. So I think it kind of comes to how bad was it? Is it a couple BBs from long range, or are you missing 3 toes? There's a difference there, and that's where I get back to a little bit of like, depending on severity, having communication can be really, really vital. I mean, we sell a lot of parks we don't make too on our website, like Garmin's. I've got a Garmin InReach is with me all the time, and I can hit an SOS, and it's expensive, but you're going to stay alive probably because somebody's coming. So it just depends. Like, you got to be a little prepared for everything, and obviously you can never probably be fully prepared. I mean, a grizzly attacks you from behind. There's not a lot in our kit that's going to, help you navigate that.
Right.
But we have a lot of stuff in there. I mean, what I see is like people are out there and they're super thirsty. It's a hot day, and okay, I'm going to drink some water out of that little brook over there, and then you're dealing with giardia or something else, like having a little water filter, or maybe being able to make shade if you're for some reason have heat stroke, or maybe you're freezing and you just need to create a way to create some warmth. I mean, there's a lot of things like that happen all the time. People get lost. They have to spend a night out in the woods, and being able to have a waterproof shelter that's refracting infrared heat back at you and have a little shelter can be the difference between life and death. So for me, those are the things we focus on. Gunshots are, I mean, I'll be honest, like there's sometimes, you're dead instantly. And sometimes, if it's a couple BBs, it's going to suck, but you can get them out later and you're going to be fine. I think it depends.
We do have, so our show is live. Obviously, we have people commenting in, and we have a couple callers that actually filling up the queue here. So I'm going to bring one of our callers in. It's Greg Morgan. He's with First Gen Outdoors. Greg, thanks for calling into the show. Do you have a question or a story?
Hey, yeah. So thanks for taking my call. I have a little story, and I'm kind of familiar with this topic with my work. I actually was just recently in charge with creating an IFAC for my department, which that deals with a little bit more serious wounds, like you were saying, like gunshot wounds and stuff like that. And I found it was maybe 2 years ago that I was prepared, but I wasn't prepared for something a little less serious. My daughter and I were out hanging cameras, and my younger son had taken a fall, and he split his chin open like pretty good. And I remember going to my med pack, and I was like, okay, well, I have tourniquets and I have like quick clot and stuff, but I have nothing to help him with his cut on his chin. And I was like really kind of eye opening to me that I needed to kind of broaden my supplies that I carried on me with that stuff. And
you were one of those preppers. I was thinking too much in the, you weren't bringing the Snickers. You were bringing the, how am I going to eat these plants mode.
And when you stop and think about it, like how much does gauze and some medical tape weigh? Like
nothing
much.
when you need
throw
it.
Throw it in there, right? Like it's worth it.
Yeah. So I just went to a combat medical class, and it was like training for tourniquets and gunshot wounds. And so now I have that stuff with my work, and I've kind of ventured out into getting like you were talking about before, like the blister stuff. Having that stuff that's just going to either ruin your day or make it easier. And then, like you explained, it could make it to the point to where it slows you down enough to where you're getting lost. It's dark and you're in the woods. So I've kind of gotten more stuff. And then I don't classify myself as a prepper, but I do have it like that stuff in my truck. I have it in my work bag that I have. And then, I have one of those Vortex bino cases. Their biggest one, I think it's like called the Guide or something. And I have some stuff in the pouch there too that I carry. But it sounds like the pack that you guys have would be great. That it's like already good to go and has all that stuff. And
yeah, I mean, we've got all sorts of different sizes. I mean, I think that's up to the person to determine. Are you riding in on a 4-wheeler and walking a quarter mile to a stand, or are you packing a 60-pound pack and you're going to be on foot for miles and miles? And that helps answer those questions. But no, I'm with you, man. I mean, it's kind of endless as to what could happen, and you kind of want to buy the things that work in the most scenarios, and you want some large scale stuff and some small scale stuff. And I think experience is a wonderful teacher, and you just it's the prepper word has become kind of stigmatized, right? Everybody thinks of like John Goodman and 10 Cloverfield Lane, if you've seen that movie. He's like praying for the aliens to show up because he's been waiting for this moment his whole life. And I'm not that guy either, but man, you get lost in I used to ride snowmobiles like insane amounts when I was a little kid, and I'd get lost, or as a storm come in, you couldn't figure it. It's just that stuff teaches you, and you don't want to be in that situation too many times. So you start planning, and the more you do it, the more efficient you get, and the more prepared you are. And it's just especially in the world we live in today, it's something I think everyone should pay attention to as much as they can.
Yeah, and it's good to you could definitely I change it up depending on what I'm hunting. Like I've gone out to Ohio and hunted public land there, and I'll go out by myself for a long weekend, and I'll bring different stuff if that's the case. Or if I'm with a buddy, I won't. Or depending on how deep I go in, it would be different than if I'm running out the door after work and going to my local hunting spot. I'm not going to be carrying all of this stuff. So, right.
I mean, seasonal too. I mean, I've got I run the company, so my truck's got quite a bit of gear in it, and I'm about to do that seasonal changeover now. We keep getting these snowstorms, so I haven't done it, but you don't need the same stuff in Wisconsin winter as you do in Wisconsin summer. So, it's just being on top of that stuff. A bunch of blankets aren't going to do you much good if it's 120 degrees, when you need water.
Thanks for the call, Greg. We appreciate it. We got another one behind you. In fact, it's another Greg. So I'm gonna drop you off and bring in the other Greg.
Yeah, thanks, man.
All right, sounds good, guys.
Have a good one.
All right. Greg, how you doing? You're live on the show. You got a question or a story?
Well, we got all sorts of stories, don't we? But no, question in regards to gear, in particular, are you making a kit for like big water fishermen? And the reason I ask that is like on Lake Michigan here, when we go out, we have to have certain things in the boat. So it'd be great to have a pack that had the medical kit, the flare gun, all the signal devices that we would have to comply with the rules of the Coast Guard. Is that something you have?
Kind of. So, when push comes to shove, we're still a small company, and what we're trying to do is build products that affect the widest group of people we can. So we haven't gotten hyper specific on anything. And yeah, I mean, I have a boat myself, so I'm familiar with the flare guns. And we don't build a flare gun. We kind of focus on the first aid stuff. So, like that kit they have in front of them there, 100% waterproof, a Molly backer, you can strap it on, it's not going to fall out. It's got some tools and first aid in it. But we don't make anything specific to the fishing you're doing. We have a long pipeline of products of things we're considering for the future, and as we grow and we can handle more inventory, then we're getting more specific, right? We're thinking about off-roading and boats, and we're thinking about all that different stuff. So I wouldn't be surprised in the near future if we have something more specific, but for most people that maybe have a bass boat, maybe they've got a wakeboard boat or just a little John boat or whatever, that thing is going to work really well. It floats, it's airtight, you can strap it on, it's got a lot of great stuff in it. But so I guess the answer is kind of, and I wish I could say for sure here it is, but it's just
on the product roadmap. I know a number of captains that are out chartering in the ocean. Obviously the Lake Michigan's basically our version of a little ocean here. No salt, no sharks. Right. So I'm happy to have it. but I think Greg, you got a good point there that maybe there's some opportunity as they continue to grow that could be some products that you could look forward to or something, whether it's got the flare gun or not, I'm not sure. But I have an uncle that lost his brother out in Lake Michigan, and he was out there every single day of his life. Basically, he was as expert as they come, and some big waters came, and their boat went down. It was cold, and they never found him, and that was last year. So it can really happen to anybody. I don't know that anything would have saved him then or not. But you did mention, Christian, you had some sort of lifeboat too. Like what is that product?
Oh yeah, we built it. We call it the Rapid Raft. So there was a military request for rapid water crossings, lightweight water crossings, and we have a patent on this. It was named Best in Show at Outdoor Retailer, which is a pretty big deal for us as a small company. But it's a little. I mean, it packs up smaller than a loaf of bread. It weighs 3.5 pounds. You can inflate it in 30 seconds, and I have video to prove it, with no tools. And it'll hold 400 pounds. And while it was designed for kind of, getting across a river, or a lake, or a small body of water, there's stuff all over the internet of people doing class 2, class 3 rapids in it, which I don't recommend, but it is tough enough, and it will. But that's kind of a cool adventure / preparedness tool. If there's high water, you've got a way to carry a bunch of stuff out or throw grandma in it. But what I use it for, I have one in my truck all the time, is if I'm scouting for elk or shed hunting up in the Uinta Mountains here, we'll get way up 10, 12, 13,000 feet, and there's these high alpine lakes, and they'll get fished around the edges because people will hike up to them and fish. But you can inflate that raft, go out the middle, throw a fly, and kind of backstroke with it 30 feet off the boat and catch fish like crazy. And it's just pretty cool to put a boat in a body of water that's never had a boat on it before. So it's kind of fun.
Yeah, when you first mentioned that raft, my mind did not go to survival mode. It went to, man, I have been.
How can I get some whitetail out of here? Can I bring a loaf of bread with me to cross this river?
What is the easiest way? Can I pole vault across that with a dead branch? Can I set up a zip line? But I literally thought about buying a cheap inflatable tube at Walmart and carrying it in my pack so I can sit there.
We tried to cross a frozen
we talked
irrigation
about that
thing
when we went across that ice, because we went out in the morning, it was frozen,
and by the afternoon it was not frozen.
We all made it across. And all of us stayed dry. So
no, I did not stay dry. I was the guinea pig.
A little bit of mud kicking up, but we did make it. Eric was the brave one. You went first.
I lost the sock in that trip. We did not all come back
At least
home.
It wasn't for wiping.
It looked like it was. It was pretty muddy.
It looked worse.
Thanks for calling, Greg. Greg's our other co-host. He's not feeling well. I'm glad you called in, Greg.
Yeah, buddy. We'll see you.
All right, take it easy.
Christian, you got, so this is the okayest hunter. We celebrate failures, and we celebrate them to laugh at ourselves in some future state, because of course when it happens you're frustrated and pissed off. But failure is one of the things that solders a lesson in your brain better than most things. It's once you fail at something, you typically aren't going to make that mistake again. And if you do, you got to question your intelligence a little bit. So to that end, I'm curious if you have, as a hunter or just general outdoorsman, if you have at least one okayest, what we call okayest moments here at Okayest Hunter, where you did something silly that you're like, oh God, I can't believe that happened, or whatever.
So many.
Right?
That's all of us.
I mean, gosh, just, learning how to elk hunt basically on my own for the last 3 years has been, you probably could have made a sitcom out of it the first couple of years. And I finally have been successful now a bit. But, man, that's how you learn, right? You can't read a book and go out and figure that out. You got to try. That said, two things come to mind. One happened 2 days ago. I was in Texas hunting axis deer with my bow, and I was waiting for a new bow to arrive, and it arrived like a couple days before I was taking off for Texas. And so I'm looking at the bow that I am just so comfortable with, and I know exactly how it shoots. And then my new bow with the Garmin A1i Pro sight, which I've been dying to try, and I'm like, I can do this. I can get this dialed. So, working long days, come home, shoot arrows until I know I'm missing, I'm off because, I'm tired. Put a couple hundred through, and then I realized, I was like, man, this doesn't quite feel right. And I realized my draw length was like too short. And so I put a new kind of module, whatever they do to switch those things out on the cams, right before I took off. And the way those Garmin sites work is you enter a bunch of data and then you shoot. And so one of the most important data points is your arrow speed. And my bow was shooting at 297. We switched those cams out. I was at the store. I'm like, I'm just going to throw it on. It shot at 297. I searched the internet. It sounded like as long as there wasn't a change in arrow speed, my sights should still be accurate, right? I asked a couple friends who are familiar. They're like, yeah, that makes sense. Went down to Texas, got in a little late, wanted to go out hunting right away. There's definitely a change when you go from high elevation to low with just the atmosphere pushing down on an arrow. So shot a couple of 20. It was, made a small adjustment, went out, and after about a day of tracking axis, which spot and stalk axis hunting is not easy, at least for me. It's very challenging. I got to 62 yards on a couple bucks or feeding or drinking on a pond, and had one I was going to shoot and pulled back, and I missed. And I was sure just everything felt good. And I went back after, and my bow was shooting 14 inches off. And I'm a preparedness guy. Like, I don't go in not knowing exactly what my equipment is going to do ever. And I think, before that, I was telling a friend I'd gone 5 for 5 on, one shot, one kill on my last hunts. And maybe I got a little cocky, and I'm like, yeah, I'm good.
We had to re-humiliate yourself a little bit.
For sure.
You're on our show. That's why you had a story to tell.
Yeah, but even though the data was, I still thought I was doing everything. I just didn't put in the time to shoot a bunch of arrows and really like triple check. And that's what you have to do, right? There's nothing worse than spending all the time and resources to get yourself in a position where you can take a shot at an animal and then you miss. Like, I can't think of anything stupider, in my opinion. I should be better than that.
That's a great example of you can have the greatest new technology. These bows today are unbelievable. You think about, the new bows 20 years ago and how lucky we are that even the cheapest bows now are so incredible. And you have this sight, right? This beautiful Garmin sight that does the range, and it's still the human element, right? It's always the human element that fails or messes up. It's without fail.
Even if it's like the bow is great and then you mess up as a human, but you are still the human that worked on the bow. So the human element is spattered across the whole paradigm. You're like, it's not just like it's the bow. It's like, well, if you had something to do with the bow, you probably also could have messed that up too. In addition to however you're going to give you target panic or you flinch the trigger, whatever the hell you did.
I mean, I paper tuned that thing. I read I did everything I could. I just knew in the back of my head that I had not given myself enough time to put enough arrows through it after making a pretty big change to that thing. And I knew it, and I knew it. And even though the data told me one thing, I should have just slowed down. And it wasn't trigger panic. I put 4 arrows in a tiny group, and they were all 14 inches down and 3 inches right, and I'm like, well, and I have the video, it just combed his hair as it went under him, so, that's one. The other funny one, actually, which also popped in my head, which I think people will enjoy, is I was elk hunting this year. It was kind of mid-season. I had found where a bunch of bulls were, and I was out there every night after work. And there was kind of these woods, and there was kind of a big drainage, and I'd heard some bugles over in the drainage, so I went over to check it out. And as I'm looking over this drainage, kind of on the other side, I hear a bugle behind me. And I kind of stop and listen, and then it sounds like it's coming closer. So I'm like, I need to get back in the woods. So I start moving through the woods, and you know how it is. You're trying to move fast, but you're also trying to make sure that you're not running in and the animal's seeing you. And so I'm tiptoeing and kind of stopping and checking, and then I see some movement, and I freeze. And, a nice big bull is walking in, just slow, bugling, not a care in the world. And I wait till he gets behind some trees, and I get to where I think he's going to go, and there's a lane, and I'm standing there, and he kind of almost does it, but in a way where I'm not quite there. And he walks in and stops, and he circles, and he lays down and facing me at about, I think it was like 96 yards or something, just outside of range. And I'm standing there in camo against a tree, and he's just facing me, chewing, just relaxing. And I'm like, if I kneel down, he's gonna see me, right? So he goes to like lick his back, and I drop, and I'm like looking up over, in the binos, and I can see him just kind of laying there. His ears are droopy. Other bulls are bugling. He bugles back, laying down, like nothing's getting him up, right? And so the sun's starting to set, and I'm like, I got to do something. I can't just sit here until it's dark. So I'm like, I'm going to belly crawl in 30 yards, and I'm going to stand up and I'm going to be at full draw when I stand up and just let it go.
Some white
Hell
tail,
yeah.
It's like some white tail adrenaline
Hell
stuff.
yeah. Get 'em.
I know, right? So I am using every ounce of ability in my body to be quiet, and then just slow on hands and knees with my bow. And I go about, 30, 40 yards, and I haven't heard anything yet. I'm like, well, I'll take another step. Like the closer, the better, and I'm ready to pull. And finally, I'm like, oh, I got to stand up. I got to do this. So I'm on my knees, and I pull the bow back, and I get ready, and I stand up, and he is gone. He had gotten up and just left. And I'm talking, how big are these things? 800 pounds, 900 pounds?
How are they so cool?
Big bull. And I'm literally, I could throw a baseball and hit him. And he got up and walked away. And I'm using every cell in my body to listen, to be quiet. I never heard him. And I just laughed. I'm like, I'm just impressed and also like really ashamed of myself.
But you had to try. Like you said, if you did nothing, then nothing would have happened. It would have been dark, and you were like, I should have done something. So at least you did. But
they are masters of
I wouldn't even call that an okayest moment. That's just fate or something. That's just destiny for that animal.
Hunting, man. That's awesome, though.
Yeah. I feel, it's one thing to hear him get up and run away, right? Like, I didn't even know I had no idea he'd even left. Like, never saw him, never heard a thing. I'm just like, that's insane. That's insane how those big animals can be so noisy, and then when they want to be, they can literally just vaporize into thin air.
Yeah, vanish, right?
So did you start elk hunting, Christian, when you moved to Utah? I would imagine.
Yeah, I had done one hunt before I moved here, and it just it was an unsuccessful. I went to Montana and went with a guide service and was out there for 8 or 9 days hiking around and never really saw much. And but it just got in my blood. I'll be honest, there's probably a lot of people here that'll yell blasphemy, but I have a hard time with tree stands. I am like an object in motion, and I really like spot and stalk and hiking around. And even in Texas this weekend, my Garmin did 46 miles in 2 days, and you find sheds, you find cool spots where animals are digging around, you run into animals. Like for me, like the shooting the animal is obviously like the cherry on top, but I just like being out there in nature and just feeling and smelling and hearing and experiencing everything. And if I stop, I fall asleep. And you're talking about people falling out of tree stands. Like it's going to be me if I do it. Yeah. So
the object in motion.
So whitetail hunting growing up, freezing, and these, my dad was a busy farmer, and it was one of those things where a week before he'd go out and hammer some sawed off 2x4s into a tree and put some really sketchy little stand up, and I hated it. I always felt like I was going to fall. It felt dangerous. I was cold. And so, I just didn't like tree stand hunting. And so once I got out here and got into it's mountain climbing, right? It's really mountain climbing and camping, and you're searching for these very interactive animals. And holy cow, I just love it. It's so much fun.
Awesome. My cousin gets too bored sitting in a tree stand, but he's had more success than I can imagine, doing the spot and stalk style and covering ground. He's admitted, he's like, I just can't sit still that long. It's just boring for me. So he found a way to make it work for him on the ground, and he kills big mature whitetail from 5 to 10 yards with a longbow, and it's pretty cool.
Wow.
Like the way that
really good.
He's playing chess with these animals, and it's pretty cool. Every year he's sending me a picture of a deer that I'm like, man, what the heck? And he's trying to teach me some things, and hopefully I'm receptive and it'll work out for me one day, and I can apply some of that stuff. But the sitting still thing for me, even when you're still hunting, which is an interesting term for what that means, because you're not still, you're actively walking through the woods quietly and waiting for opportune moments to walk, whether an airplane's flying overhead or some crows are coming in or a squirrel, whatever. you do have your moments of stillness in that type of hunting. It's not like you're just jogging through the woods. I read a book, Stillness is the Key, and it practically changed my life by Ryan Holiday. And then I read all of his damn books. And but that book was a big one. That was the starting point for me. And I learned to try to slow down more and disconnect and take in what, I would consider a moment. And a moment could be a minute, it could be an hour, it could be a year, really, depending on how you want to classify that. So it sounds like you're pretty good at taking that stuff in, even though you're on the move.
I've rushed it way too many times. You hear a bugle, you come in, you think they're 600 yards ahead, and they were 100 yards ahead, and they're looking at me, game over. Like that happens so much, and so I don't think there's any way to learn except experience and being out there, because sometimes you do have to move fast, and sometimes you have to be. I always tell my friends it's a little bit of Tai Chi, right? Because like you'll be halfway through a step, and then you see movement, and you're like frozen with one foot on the ground and one foot in the air, with two hands on a bow, and you got to somehow stay that way for 5 minutes because some cow has you busted and is staring at you. She saw movement and she's waiting to see what else. And
it's always the patient cow that sees you too, or the most patient doe, the one who will sit there and head bob and look. It's always the one who's got 20 minutes to kill.
Have something better to do? Yeah, Jared Scheffler with Whitetail Adrenaline did say at one point, we had him on a couple of times, he had said, you either have to be aggressive or passive aggressive in the way that they hunt. They're all ground hunting, right? They're always doing these spot and stalk type of hunts, and they're getting real close to these animals, and sometimes pretty open territory where they're belly crawling like you had tried to do, and they're doing that for like 2 hours to close the gap. But he had mentioned like at some point you just instinctually start to learn how to like navigate that stuff. That's not something that you can read about, listen to, and then apply. You got to go do it. Like you're not going to learn how to hit a fastball by reading a book. You got to go take some swings, and someone's got to pitch you a ball. At some point, you're going to have to actually swing to learn.
And this is, I know this is more whitetail than elk, but that was the thing I learned this year was being more aggressive. And when you think about it, it makes sense. Like, I used to just be quiet, right? You hear them, you kind of slowly move in, you call and you're quiet. Well, if I'm an elk and I hear an elk call and then the elk's not walking around, I'm probably wondering why that elk froze, right? Mm-hmm. So this last year, the way I shot my bull, I was bugling and cow calling, and I had a stick in my hand, and I was banging it off stuff, and they came right in, and I walked towards them, and they walked towards me. Yeah, it just sound, you sound like other elk, right? Yeah, deer are different. Yep, and so everyone is. That's why people love hunting. It's not easy. It's just, and when you do it, you feel like the smartest man on earth, and then when you fail, it's usually for something you knew better, and you just feel like an idiot. But like, that's the attraction, right? That's what it's all about.
It's the same with a lot of different things. And the guys on the comments here on our end, Christian, we're talking about turkey hunting because we're mid, Wisconsin turkey season, second season opens tomorrow, and the hunting public guys, I feel like made that really popular. But when you're calling, so many guys are sitting and calling in these dry, crunchy oak leaves. And there's never any walking sound when you're sitting there calling. The hunting public guys, if you watch their turkey videos, they call and they scratch their hand in the leaves a little bit. Because what do turkeys do when they're walking? They're scratching up the leaves, right? So sitting there and calling, same idea as your elk, like, where is the sound of the real animal? Like, where is the sound of the animal walking?
Yeah.
And I think anytime you've ever scratched in the leaves, I've scratched in the leaves turkey hunting, it's made a huge difference in the call.
Yep.
Same thing.
Even when people are like trying to, call on a buck during rut, some of these guys are pouncing around on the ground and banging into stuff and throwing leaves up in the air and
doing somersaults.
Yeah, and some will make it look goofy, but I've seen that actually work firsthand. Where you're doing those things and it's more natural, because if two bucks were fighting, they'd be messing up the ground a little bit.
If you've heard a buck fight or an elk fight,
it's loud.
It sounds like a bulldozer in the woods.
Yeah.
My buddy Billy always says they're like a drunk at a bar looking for a fight. When they come in, like they're a little crazy. And they're pissing all over, drooling and flexing and running in, and it's emotion. It's not logic at that point with the elk, and obviously that's what we all dream about. That's like the most fun is when they're just all hormones. It's pretty great.
Yeah, that's awesome.
A good lesson for us men, right? It's like
I make a lot of on our podcast over the many months we've been doing this. There's a lot of like well, if you're in a bar, anyway, we're right at about an hour, a little more so with the technical glitches we had in the beginning. But Christian, can you round us out and let people know where they can find you, how they can find you, and your products as well? Like if someone wants to learn more about you as a person, as an entrepreneur, and what you have going on, because you have a lot of unique things that you've done from that perspective, but also the product.
Yeah, our company is called Uncharted Supply Co. We spend a lot on digital advertising, so if you type in any of those words, something should show up.
Hopefully, right?
Yeah, our Instagram is at Uncharted Supply Co. Mine's at Christian Schauf. Yeah, I mean that's probably the great place to start. Our website's unchartedsupplyco.com. We're small, we're growing, but we really take pride. And I always tell our guys, like, we should treat every customer like it's our mom asking a question. We should really be a resource for people and be helpful. So if you got questions or whatever, like hit me up, hit our team up. We're not Mother Teresa. We're trying to build a for-profit business, but I also have a bit of a mission here in trying to make the world a better place. And I feel like every time we can help answer a question for somebody or get the right stuff in their hands, we're checking that box a little. So, I'd love to hear from anybody. Be fun.
Absolutely.
No, thanks for taking time out of your schedule to hang out with us. The moose in the background, the sun coming through the windows, looks good where you're at. The sun is about to go down over here. We're a little bit ahead of you in time. We're in Central. So for those that tuned in, commented in, and called in, thank you for joining us. And as always, this will be in podcast land this evening, and we'll catch you guys later. Thanks so much.
Good night.